And welcome back to another episode of Born to Talk About Sports. I am your host, Steve Bourne. New look and got a bit of a new thing I want to talk about. Normally I talk about what's going on in the sports world. I moan and drone and ask you to like and subscribe. Today's going to be a little bit different. I've decided that I'm going to start doing a bit of a series on this show. I'm going to call it Steve's Peeves, Steve's Pet Peeves. And today I'm going to talk about officials and how, because obviously if you know anything about me, I used to umpire and I used to be judged and evaluated, and if I did something wrong, I was repeatedly bad at it, I would get disciplined or coaching or whatever. But when it comes to officials all across sports in not just Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA, NFL. Well, even NFL is probably the exception. That you could be the worst official in the sport for years, for absolute years, and let's face it, you'd still have a job for life. Outside of being a weatherman, I've never seen a profession that is protected to the point where you can be absolutely wrong about 90% of the time, but once you're in the quote unquote show, you've got a job for life. And it doesn't have to be this way. I don't know why these sports leagues are afraid of these officials unions. Like, the only league I've ever really seen that to truly discipline officials in the NFL a handful of years ago. They fired one ref because he was repeatedly bad at his job. And like you've got officials in Major League Baseball. Let's go classic, everyone's favorite whipping boy and mine, Angel Hernandez. I mean, the players have voted him and CB Buckner, the two worst umpires in baseball, flip flopping for the last about 10, 12 years. Yet they still have jobs. I don't understand how they can still have jobs when the players don't respect them, the managers sure as hell don't respect them, and the broadcasters take shots at them. And then you've got, like, in the NBA, something looks like something might have been done finally when Toronto Raptors point guard Fred VanVleet, when he started his press conference, you know it was going to be good when he goes, "I don't give a bleep if I'm going to get fined." And then he drops about 3 or 4 F-bombs talking about how bad that one ref was going after him. And apparently after that, that one ref who was the head of a crew is now no longer listed internally as the chief official of his crew. So maybe something does have to happen like that. And then he got in the NHL, where it's clear that some players have feuds with refs, or refs have feuds with a player, maybe because they figured he's a diver or a whiner or whatever. But it gets to the point where refs just won't call any penalties on him. I mean, the classic example right now is it's actually a joke across the league, is Michael Bunting. For a couple of years, he led the league in penalties drawn, and so now anytime the officials think, "Oh, he's got to be diving," so they're not going to call it a bleeping thing on him. I mean, this year Bunting has been punched in the face, where the visor cracked his cheek open, no call. He's been slashed across the wrist, where he had to go in for x-rays. He's been slew-footed. He's been tripped. I mean, last night, as I'm recording this is on Easter Sunday, last night against Montreal, after the whistle, Joel Edmondson of the Montreal Canadiens cross-checked him clear across the back and wasn't even expecting it, slid a little bit, and absolutely no call. I mean, it was like a 6-7, it was like a 6-1 game at that point, where if a ref's really trying to get control of it, if you thought Bunting dived, fine, give Bunting the 2-minute for diving, but you give Edmondson 2 minutes for the cross-check and a 10-minute misconduct for basically being an idiot. And because it did start a brawl. Wayne Simmons got in there to defend him. I mean, once Bunting got in, he went in there too, but still, it's like, that stuff doesn't have to happen if the officials just do their jobs, call the obvious stuff, and regardless of who's drawing the penalty. I don't care if he's a diver or whatever. If it's an obvious penalty, call it. And in Major League Baseball, if what was it, Angel Hernandez in one playoff game had four calls at first base overturned on challenges, and I mean he's gonna be more hung out to dry when the challenge strike zone rule comes in next year, where you guarantee almost every one of his quote unquote strike three calls gets overturned via challenge. And I don't know, but again, my biggest frustration, my biggest Steve peeve, is that the league seems to be fine with it. I simply don't get it. And now that gambling has become same one game gambling has become a huge part of it with like I've gone before, FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM, hell even Proline up here, and all those sports books, Bet365, you name it. Um, Gamblers might actually have a huge influence on how the league is officiated, because people are going to be losing thousands and possibly tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars because of poor officials not doing their job. And if it gets to that point where, say, there's lawsuits against the league for you're putting an inferior, you're putting a product that we're allowed to bet on, and you're costing us money by not having the best out there like you said you were. Lawsuits are definitely a possibility down the road. Yeah, no, it's going to get to the point where, like, where these sports leagues will have to actually, stand up. I mean, almost any other union, you can still get fired in a union. It's just you go through steps. You go through written or oral warnings, suspensions, and then termination, which is standard in unions. In Major League Baseball, your punishment for not having a good season is you don't get playoff games. So what? You can screw a team all the way to the playoffs. You just can't screw them in the playoffs. In the NBA and NHL, it's the same sort of thing. It's just if you're deemed by your supervisor not having a good season, you just don't get playoff games. Well, you still don't get, but then you get a fresh slate start the next year. It's one of those things that, again, it ticks me off. It's easily correctable, and I understand officials will miss calls. They're human. I mean, especially in NBA and the NHL, where the games are relatively fast and you don't get all the calls. But I've always said, at least call the obvious stuff, where you're looking right at it. Screw the game management BS. If a team has committed 7 penalties in the first period of a game, call them, especially if they're the obvious stuff. Don't do their little nitpick hooks, or in the NBA little tap fouls. But if someone's in the NBA, someone's going up for a layup, and a guy smacks the wrist on the way up, I don't care if his name is Kevin Durant or Joe Blow on the Pistons. If it's a foul, it's a foul. The idea of earning calls, and it's the same in the NHL to an extent too. Like, you're a lot more likely to get a slash if you or a hooking penalty if you get near Connor McDavid, as opposed to, say, equivalent of a fourth liner on the Coyotes. It's like same in pitching with Major League Baseball. How many times to my older viewers, how many times did you see John Smoltz get a strike three call that was obviously like 3 or 4 balls off the plate? And it's these reputation calls; those have to go. Because the league, especially as it goes back to gambling. I hate to say it, but if goes back to gambling for the simple reason is you want the games to be called fairly for both sides, for all players. And when officials say, nah, I don't think he deserved that one, it doesn't matter if he deserved it or not. Call the frickin' thing. And that's why I think that it is coming. I think it'll be coming in a few years, though, where officials are going to start to held accountable. The leagues are going to have to start disciplining and possibly terminating officials for poor performance. And that I mean, everyone will still complain about officials because it's a sports fans thing to do. You don't want to take shots at your own team. You invested too much time and money in it, or possibly alcohol. But with officials though is like I say, and I think I speak for almost all sports fans. Just call the obvious stuff. And if official refuses to call the obvious stuff, discipline them. Put something in their file. Put something on their record that shows that they've had poor performances and need to do better, or there will be somebody who wants to prove themselves and move on. Don't Pro sports officials shouldn't basically have a job for life. It's not like a university or something like that where you can have a job for life. It shouldn't be like that, especially with money on the line. I think again, I know I'm coming back to it, but it all comes down to money. And these officials, and I think everybody knows, everybody has an official they love to pick on. And I think it needs to come down to, can you do the job without thinking who is it happening to and who's doing it? If you can't take away the numbers and names on the back, you should be official in pro sports, because at that point then it's not about calling the game right, it's about calling the game you want. Hopefully you guys like this little rant. Like and subscribe, share, tell your friends. This has been cathartic for me. I'm sure we'll try to keep the chat going in the comment section. Use the hashtag Born Sports, and next time I'm thinking doing my rant on stubbornness of teams and players not willing to admit when there's something wrong. And until next time, happy Easter, stay safe, and it looks like here in Southern Ontario we're getting some nice weather, so enjoy the weather.